My name is Jiles Smith, and welcome to Our Community. Welcome, Mr. Busby, to Our Community. Please tell us more about you. Give us a background.
Well, I've been in the high desert about 35 years, and I was fortunate enough to be elected to the Victorville City Council in, I think it was 1988. And so from that, I've just tried to be a community leader and to be involved in the community.
But you were in the military as well, correct?
Yes, I'm a Navy veteran, Vietnam veteran, decorated Vietnam veteran.
So when you were serving on the board of Victorville, you served on Sandbag and different other boards, correct?
Yes, I did. I was elected to Victorville City Council in '88 and eventually put in as mayor. I served 3 terms as mayor, but in addition to that, I served as the president of Sandbag. I served as the president of the Victor Valley Economic Development Authority. I served as George Air Force Base. I served on the Los Angeles board. I represented the entire high desert on the Los Angeles board, which is similar to Sandbag, but it's the Los Angeles board.
So tell us, what do you think about politics right now in the high desert? Is it going pretty smooth? Is it confrontational as our national elections?
Well, I don't think it's that complicated, but I do think that we need better representation as it relates to blacks. And the reason I say that is, if you recall, in the city of Ferguson, Missouri, where they had all the conflict, one of the reasons was that the police force was not in step with their community. And a lot of that has to do with having local elected people from the various communities and ethnic groups. And in Ferguson, as I recall correctly, during the time that they had difficulties, they didn't really have any, maybe one representative from the entire area. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's very important to have representation from the various, when I say communities, I'm talking about ethnic communities involved. And I think that we have some really good leadership in terms of a sheriff. We have an excellent sheriff in Sheriff John LeMan. And we have a good supervisor, and we have a good representative from the federal standpoint in Paul Cook. But I do think that we need to, for example, in the city of Victorville, I've been off the board now since beginning of around 2000. So it's been several years, and we have never had a black elected to the Victorville City Council since then. And I know that there are many qualified people that could get elected if they were to run. And in particular, I really put an emphasis on the younger people. I think we need younger people to run for the city council and run for the various school boards, because they are the people that are implementing the change, and they're current, and there's kind of really a new thinking as it relates to young people. So I'd like to see more of them get involved.
So you mentioned that we need more people to get involved. What do you recommend should be the pillars of their personalities that really separate them from others?
Well, let me just tell you where I came from. I retired from TRW and NASA, and at TRW I was a program manager, at NASA I was a program manager, and when I ran for the board for the Victorville City Council, I had been a manager for about 15, 20 years. So, you know, managing a city, being a mayor is managing. So if you can manage in a corporation, you can manage in the city. So I think you need to have people with real good business skills, and I think that they have to have a feeling for the community. And I also think that one of the most important things is that they're not in it to make money. I think that's the real problem that we have in politics. Mm-hmm. And on these local boards, you don't really make any money. You receive some minimum stipend. But I think that sometimes we have people run for these boards that are trying to make money, and it's just simply not a money-making deal. If you want to make money, go into business and start your own business. Right. So I'd like to see someone with business skills, and people that care about the community. I think education is a major part, because the young people, you become an example for the young people, and they're looking at you. And to have an education is very important also.
So I like those two qualities, education as well as some kind of business acumen. Because a lot of people who run are small business owners. Right. But you still need some other kind of skills to be successful. And you mentioned a little bit about community service. Right. So what other kind of skills you think would be a successful city or town councilman? Okay, when I mentioned I work for NASA and TRW, but when you work for a company like that, you take a systems approach. And when I say systems approach, that is, everything is interconnected. You've got to be able to put the dots together, you know, be it the community, be it religion, whatever it is, you've got to put it into a system. And from that system, you develop a strategy of implementation. And so I really like to see people with those kinds of backgrounds. Now a small business owner, it's okay, that's great too, but you need a combination. And typically in small communities such as ours, you'll have people that were teachers, or they were owners of small businesses. But also, remember, the cities up here are not small businesses, they're big businesses, if you want to look at them that way, right, with trillions of dollars in assets and over 100,000 people. So they would be a big business. So you have to understand accounting, you have to understand workflow, you have to understand personnel. It's just a whole myriad of things as it relate to a business, a big business, but not some little corner market where you are, you know, a small restaurant. All those skills are very important. I like what you're talking about, because you're right, the personnel piece of the puzzle and getting along with people. Sometimes in our local government, as well as our national government, state government, conflict, and I teach conflict resolution at the local college down there in Riverside. But conflict is a good thing, but too much conflict is a bad thing. What do you think about conflict in local? Well, you have to get along, because if you look at your local boards, most of them consist of 5 people, which would include the mayor. And you only have one vote regardless as to whether you're the mayor or not. Although you, as a mayor, you set the agenda and you really can set the direction of the city or town, as it may be, as it relates to Apple Valley. So you have to be able to negotiate deals. I mean, it's a matter of negotiation. You got to give and you got to take. But if you just dig your heels in, nothing happens and the people will suffer. So you've got to be able to give and take. And I know the councils that I served on with many people, it was a give and take. We would, you know, we had our disagreements, believe me, very much so. But one of the things I must say, we all respected one another. So we only took that disagreement to a certain extent. So you started off by saying that there's some lack of diversity in some of these local commissions and boards and city council races, etc. What would you do to fix it, or how would you nurture individuals to get to a point of actually running? Okay, I would have to take them city by city. I'll start out with the one that I'm most familiar with, which is Victorville. As it stands now, I think we have 2 Latinos, Hispanics on the Victorville City Council, which is wonderful. There are no blacks, and I think we have 1 woman. So there are no blacks. So clearly, we need to have black representation. When I was elected, I think blacks were about 5% of the population up here. And if I were to take a guess at it now, it's probably more like 9 or 10%. So, you know, one cannot get elected on a black agenda. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about having people that come from various backgrounds to form something that's called a council that can work together. Now, in the city of Hesperia,
They only had they had one black that I knew of in the past, Kevin Vickers, and he served one term. So I don't think there's anyone there, and hasn't been anyone in the city of Spirit in many years. And then Apple Valley, I've never known the town of Apple Valley to have any blacks on the board. I don't know about Hispanics. Then Adelanto, you have, I think you got 2 blacks over there now. And so Adelanto has been one of the cities that has been more progressive in terms of blacks getting involved. It's the smallest city in the high desert. They're around 12,000. The remainder of the cities in town of Apple Valley is around 100,000. So I think that we need to get elected. I think you got to, first of all, come up with your agenda and what you can do for the community. Not what the community can do for you, but what you can do for the community. And if you have something to offer and you're willing to invest the time and energy, then I think you should run. But I think it's also very important to have some experience. Now, if you've never, let's say you've never been a manager and never worked in a large corporation, I don't think you should start out on the city council. I think you should run for some of those school boards, local school boards, water boards, something of that nature to build up your credentials, try and get on the planning commissions, or some of the various boards that the various cities have. So, you know, that's where you get that experience. But once you get that experience or you feel that you have something to offer, then by all means, I would suggest you run.
So how do you stop the thought process of pride to come into play? Some people run they say for the best intentions, but when you peel it all away, it's about pride instead of what's good for the people. I mean, how do you identify that? How do you make sure that's not the reason you're running, and etc.?
Well, if you're running for pride, you shouldn't run. But you should know, you should know why. When you get ready to run for a city government job, you should know what you can offer the city.
So in most local governments in the high desert, a little bit more than 50% of their budgets go to police and fire. And that's very difficult to deal with when you're trying to manage park and recs and all the other services that cities have to maintain. How would you rectify that, and is that important? How would you, what kind of analysis would you have about that?
Well, you know, that's one of my pet peeves. I believe that the most, without a doubt, the most important parts of running a city are your fire and police. I mean, there's no question about it. The emergency services people. And typically the sheriffs and fire departments are underfunded, in particular the sheriff. And so the sheriff officers that we have are very good, but they need resources. They cannot, to get the resources they need, I think that the cities should, one of the things I would try to do, which is very difficult to do, is think about implementing like a half-cent sales tax that would go strictly to police. Nobody could touch it. No, you know, that it's just like some of the monies that the cities get from the state for road repair. Right. The city budget, nobody can touch that money. It's just strictly for road repair. And I think if we were to come up with a 1.5% sales tax, and then that money, in addition to what the cities already have or appropriated, then that money would go to the local sheriffs and the various departments. And the reason I'm saying it, they do a great job, but what that would do is give them the monies for more deputies for proactive patrol. Proactive patrol is patrolling the streets and making sure that everything's okay, not just responding to calls, but proactive patrol. And again, I just think the world of our sheriff department and the men and women that run it. They do a great job, but I think that the cities should step up and do more to support the various sheriff departments, the sheriff department in the various cities.
Well, how reasonable is that to do if each city acts upon itself versus acting as a collective? If the whole high desert tried to implement that as a collective and to try to reduce the rates, if they can also get something in return from the sheriff department, possibly like a standardization of rates for a certain period of time, that theoretically could work. Is that what you're kind of recommending?
Oh, absolutely, and that's a great concept, because one of the things we did once before when I was on Sandbag for roads is we implemented a half-cent sales tax just to be used for construction, repairing the roads, etc. And we did it with all of the cities. Actually, it was a county initiative, and perhaps a better place to do it would be at the county level as opposed to the city level. But again, you have to get everybody to buy into it. And the half-cent sales tax, once the people saw that it would be used in a very positive way for the betterment of the community, the people voted for it. I mean, I know people don't like to talk about increasing taxes, but if I were able to get 2 or 3 more police officers on proactive patrol in my city, I would certainly be willing to pay a half-cent more in sales tax.
Well, we kind of talked offline that we work with Sheriff McMahon quite a bit, and his staff is awesome. We think very highly of himself and his staff. So I think they would do the right thing if they had extra money for extra patrols, etc. So I can sign on to that. That sounds like a good idea. Let's go to another subject, jobs. I know you work at the Air Force Base, Georgia Air Force Base a little bit, or you have partnerships there, and also with NASA. Talk to us about jobs. How do you see our high desert at the present time, and what would you do to help us out, or what would you recommend?
The key to economic development in the high desert is Georgia Air Force, formerly Georgia Air Force Base. When I was mayor, one of the things that we did is we were working with the various cities to create an air cargo hub in the city of Victorville at Georgia Air Force Base. And during that time, planes would fly into Los Angeles and offload their cargo. And then some of them would go to Ontario. But at Georgia Air Force Base, you would save billions of dollars if the planes could land and offload their cargo and then ship it out by rail and truck. And we were working with Lulio, Sweden, and Vatry, France, who both of those countries had Air Force bases that were closed too. So at the time, we were trying to create an air cargo hub between Victorville, Lulio, Switzerland, Sweden, and Vatry, France. And that's something that I think should be pursued. But one of the things that I think we're missing is having people on the various councils that have that ability to market and know how to bring in business. I don't see anybody trying to bring in some of the major companies around here. For example, one of the things that I would look at is currently NASA has a facility in Palmdale. And NASA is where I worked up at Ames Research Center in Palo Alto area. They have partnerships with JPL, which is a NASA facility in Pasadena. And some of the things I think we should do is partner with NASA and maybe Cal State San Bernardino to go after various contracts that are out there. I think that we could develop some jobs through that. And also I think that we should have some stronger ties to Palmdale and the NASA facility there. I think the opportunities, but you got to put together joint partnerships. And that's when the federal government funds these projects, they're looking for partnerships between private industry, cities, and universities. So we have to put together those kind of groups to go after some of these large federal programs. The money is there.
I think you're right on. I actually have pondered and actually have expressed an idea that the councils of the different cities work more as a collective. And if you think about it, there's a Walmart superstore that's coming in. We tend to bid for them and argue back and forth who gets that business versus working as a collective. What's good for all of us at the same time. In that situation, everybody can't win. But as a bigger piece of it, we're all stronger. Like Victor Valley College, it's good that they're successful because we're all successful because of it.
Right.
So down that same line, I think you're talking about.
Exactly. We've got to work as 4 communities and the county up here. We have to work together. We do it on the Victor Valley Transit Authority, and we're doing it somewhat at George Air Force Base, but I haven't really seen that drive, or maybe the individuals to lead that drive to create those kind of businesses that I've been thinking about. And at one time, I was really in favor of the Mag Lab trains. As a matter of fact, that was one of the initiatives that myself and then Mike Rothschild, who was vice mayor, we were working on bringing that Mag Lab to Victorville. That's why one of the reasons we created the Victorville Transit Center down on 18th Street is to eventually have the Mag Lab stop here on its way to Vegas. And I just think those kind of things are there, but you've got to work on them. They don't just, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take years to develop them. But you've got to have people that understand the various nuances of business to do it. And so you got to go out and market. You got to work as a group with the county and the 4 cities and market this stuff together. Market the area, not any particular city.
Then what about situations like Flint, Michigan, in which the government took over the water system, and now the government's going to end up getting sued because they knowingly put poor water? If it was a private company, would they make those same decisions?
I think a private company would probably do worse. I think that Flint is a unique situation in that the area was predominantly black, and again, this goes back to having fair representation and on the various boards. But I think that what they did in Flint was criminal. I mean, they clearly just tried to save a couple of bucks. And remember, if you put a private company in charge of that, their whole thing is the bottom line in terms of dollars. And I think you could even end up with worse situations. You just have unscrupulous, crooked people that should go to jail in Flint.
I hear what you're saying. I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you, but I am saying that if the bureaucracy caused the problem, I would submit to you that if it was a private industry, they would be more understanding to the possible lawsuits of making any kind of criminal activity. They have Sarbanes-Oxley they got to deal with. There's certain things they have to be checks and balances. Most of our water systems right now have to go through a board to raise fees. If a city-owned water company wouldn't have to use that process. They could just raise the fees because they choose to. Or their budget is short on one side, so let's raise the fees on the water. Do you trust government that much that they'll actually do the right thing if given all that power?
When it comes to resources, I think the government is the best place for the resources. But again, private companies are there to make money. And I think that they will cut wherever they can cut. And I really think that a government where you elect people and they're responsible to the people would do a better job. Now keep in mind, in Flint, well, in Chicago, not Chicago, but Detroit, which is close by, remember the governor appointed an emergency manager and put them in charge of the city. And that started the whole process. Of the whole area just going down in terms of government. So they have a lot of cronies that were just put in there to do things, and they didn't do it. And again, it was you go back. It starts in that area. It was the governor, and the governor actually should be terminated. They should recall the governor.
Okay. Well, we can maybe agree to disagree. I think bottom line is that private industry can do some things better than government.
I think the private industry can do some things better than government too, but I don't think managing my water resources is one of them. I wouldn't trust it. You know, like a good example, again, the prison system.
Okay.
We have, in Atlanta, I think they have 3 or 4 private prisons up here. I wouldn't trust my prison system to private contractors.
So, okay, let's talk about that then. So you rather have prison workers. You know we pay prison workers more than we pay teachers. So you rather spend more money on prison guards, don't disrespect the prison guards, but you rather spend more money on that part than spend money on preventing situations before they happen.
Well, no, I wouldn't. What I think before you get to, we're getting into another subject now, But before you even get to prison, you've got to create the job.
Agreed.
If people have jobs, they won't commit crimes as much. So everything begins with the economic base, and that's job creation.
But before jobs, you have to be educated. So if you have decent educators to help people be learned in trades, etc., and then jobs, and go to college if possible, then they won't necessarily go to prison. Most people in prison, as you know, don't have a high school degree, come from broken homes. Right. So if you want to fix the system totally, in reality, wouldn't we focus on those things versus spending money after the fact on prisons?
Oh, I totally agree. Okay. You got to put the money in the education system. Right. We're putting a lot of money in education. You know, there's some controversy about the charter schools and public schools, but it's a complicated process. But I do think and clearly support putting money into education. Okay. You got to have it in education, and you got to have job development. It's a system, right? And that's what I'm saying. It all has to work together as a system. It's a systematic process that we've used for years in this country, and we just have to implement it on the local levels. We got to have people that understand how to implement it.
See, I think that's what you're tying this all together. You have to have a wide array of thought processes and the diversity of managers of a city, so that you can get all the different perspectives, so the city can work as efficiently as possible, eliminating duplication, etc.
Exactly.
Okay. So
exactly. So you know, like if you got, let's say you have a city with 5 teachers on the board of
on the school board.
On the school board, I don't think that's your best input. Right. You need to get people from the business community involved. You need to get people, parents involved that have no axe to grind. So you gotta have a good combination of people. And that's what I think is the key to this whole situation.
So let me try to paraphrase. In short, not necessarily just down racial lines. No. You want to diversify the sexual orientation, sexual whatever sex the person may be, but also socioeconomic, but also background. A person can be rich, poor, whatever background they came from, different country, etc. You want the diversity of thought.
You've got to have the diversity of thought to have successful communities.
Well, I want to thank you very much for coming on our show. Is there anything else you want to add or tell the audience?
Well, I just think the Victor Valley is a great place to live. I enjoy living here, and now that I'm retired, it's even nicer. But I think that we really have to do a couple of things. We've got to do more for our young people, and we've got to create jobs. The jobs, everybody's going down the hill now. So if you get on I-15 and drive down the hill, you're in traffic for hours. And so why to have all of these people commuting and using gas when we have the workforce? We're beginning to get the workforce up here. Let's create the jobs up here. We cut down on pollution, and we could enhance our educational systems here. So I say let's really work to create the jobs here in Victorville or the Victor Valley.
Well, outstanding. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for your service to our state, our country, and to most importantly, our community.